Hey, everybody. All right. So we are going to give ourselves a little bit of time for some guests I invited to come on. All right. The This is a very interesting topic, but it was really difficult for me to find knowledgeable people on this topic. It's most people most people don't try to look into the future. They're not seeing they're not paying attention to the trends. They're not paying attention to the cause and effect of stuff, whether it's taxes or whether it's uh, the taxes and inflation. We can think of that with our assets, but there's trends like this AI trend coming up right now. That's had some effect for a while. All right. My youngest son graduated cum laude from University of West Florida with a degree in computer science, and which sounds great, right? And he got a job, a data entry position with Navy Federal Credit Union, and he's working on some AI stuff that can like read the mannerisms of patrons coming into the bank, just determine their mood, right? There's a lot of applications. I know that there's been around for a while, a software that can detect the mannerisms of terrorists in airports, even if they're wearing a disguise. It can determine who they're a terrorist by their recognized mannerisms. Okay, so that kind of is very interesting what he's doing. The applications of it, right? But for the majority, I used to, when I was between companies, I would go to coffee shops and like it says, uses a satellite office, and I saw uh, every time. In fact, I could go up to the one right on the corner right now, and for sure, there's somebody doing data entry for her job in the coffee shop, right, with a background in computer science. The point is, so many people from Google and Yahoo um, got laid off because of AI, right? And so that how is he to know, right? I mean, but as a kid growing up, we raised hogs. We had 5 acres. My stepdad had 5 acres, and we built 5 barns on that property. We had 80 sows, and we raised feeder pigs up to 40 pounds, and then we'd sell them for someone to finish and take them to market. And the in the beginning, it was great. He made great money, way more money than he did on his job in working construction as a cement mason. Okay. But then everybody got into the market and it flooded the market, and the price of pork went way down. Okay. And so that was a microcosm of economics for me. All right. In the mortgage real estate business, right? In the mortgage business, especially, there's these, it's like you can set your watch the the market in the spring, during spring break, especially during spring break, but the summertime, and then the winter break, the Christmas break. Okay, rates go up. After Thanksgiving they go up, right? Right after Memorial Day, actually before Memorial Day, when spring break starts, that's when rates start climbing, right? And they stay up all summer. Why? Because that's when people are moving, because their kids are out of school and they're moving to a new area, all right? And the kids can get started in the new school in the summertime, but that's when they're moving, that's when they're buying new houses. So it's all supply and demand. Rates go up. Okay. Um, oh, I'm hoping we get some guests on here because we got some things to talk about. Okay. So people freak out when it comes to the market fluctuations, but these are great opportunities for people to catch up, right? And people are funny. It. I like to go talk to trade schools, welding, HVAC, electrician, automotive repair, right? Oh, barber colleges, cosmetology schools. Why? Because these are they're young people, right? And once they get that credential, once they get their certificate, they are now certified to do that type of work. Their income is going to significantly increase, right? And they're going to have more money than they're able to spend right away, right? So that's the best time to get to them, right? It's easy for me to show a 22-year-old who just graduated from a trade school making 60 grand a year, which is not, not out of the picture, right? That's common actually. That putting away $650 a month into a index universal life, by the time they're 57, they got $1 million in that policy, and they don't have to work anymore if they don't want to. Okay, they could draw an income stream. 5% a year is 50 grand, right? Tax free, which is actually what would work out to be more than they're making 60 grand a year because they're paying the income tax. So it's actually a better deal, right? But when you're when you're older and you realize you're behind your late 30s, your early 40s, you're like, oh no, right? Well, the fluctuations in the market can help you catch up significantly. I'll tell you a story. All right. I'd been 2008 hit me hard, right? And had a securities license. Most of the things we were putting people in was the variable universal life products, and that means your money's in the market. And all these people, like I got my license, all my licenses like November of 2007, and I got all these people in the market, in these products, right? And then bam, down 45%, right? They and they canceled their policies. It killed me. I had chargebacks to pay forever. Okay. And well, then it was about March of 2009. I'm meeting with this lady. She's a widow. Her husband was a Marine, died in Iraq. And so I'm sitting down with her. She's got a 7-year-old from her husband who died in Iraq, had died like 7 years prior. And she hooked up with her husband's best friend, another Marine. And they didn't get married because if she did, she would have lost her, $3,000 a month widow's pay. And she had a 2-year-old and one on the way. And so I'm going through their finances like everybody else. They're spending everything they're making. But then I got to her assets, and she had been sitting on $200,000 from the SGLI Service Group Life Insurance that she got when her husband died. Like she got $400,000. So she took $200,000 and she bought the house that she was living in San Marcos, California, on a hill overlooking the ocean, right? And a big, I think it was like 3 or 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, beautiful house, right? And she looks at me and she goes, I know the market's on sale. I just don't know what to do. So out of that 200,000, she gave 117,000 to me to put into strategies for her. So I started off with a a non-qual 75,000 into a non-qualified annuity with Lincoln Financial that, hey, they got a special exemption from the IRS. So the way they blended the basis and the gain, um, she paid a lot less in taxes when she took her money out. Okay. And the older she got, the less taxes she had to pay. Well, now everybody can in a non-qualified annuity, they'll do this. Okay. And every carrier will do this. But at this time, they were like the first one, right? And then I set her up with a California municipal bond fund as an emergency fund. I think it was like 15,000. She got a 5% discount. Okay. And and then a variable universal life with Pacific Life. And she front loaded it for years with a premium. Okay. Well, that means she got gain on her money right away. Okay. And okay, so at her annual review, now this is like March of 2010, and the annuity did 47%, the VUL did like 45%, and the California Municipal Bond Fund did 28%. Okay, so everybody's like, get her out of that because that's never happening again. So I rolled or I converted that money into a non-qualified annuity with another carrier, which had a great guarantees, like a 6% minimum, right, and then up to locked in at the highest daily value, right. And then she didn't know how to read her statements, and I had left the industry for a while, and she'd always call me up every year and like try to help her figure out how much money she had. So it was like 2014. I had moved to Texas. I had lived in Dallas, so she came to Dallas, and so sat down. And by this time now, with her contributions, so it's like $450 a month she was putting away into the VUL, and the annuities were just the money was just growing in the annuity. She wasn't adding to it. Okay, but with the growth and her contributions by 2014, so 5 years, no, well, yeah, 5 years later, now she has $660,000 combined, right? And then into 2019, the market was cooking, taking off. So I called her and had her get me your statements. And what had happened was by that time, now she had hit $1 million in her in this in what I did for her, right? She went 7 years and didn't grow a penny. And then now in another 10 years, she hit $1 million. Okay. It's like, you know, and she didn't even know. She didn't know until I called her and let her know. All right. But my point is this: in situations like they are now, the market is like, going into a racquetball court with a super ball and throwing it as hard as you can. It's just bam, 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 bam. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. Crypto the same way. I just saw that XRP is down, like 5% today, right? Um, what is up with that? And so there's gonna be, um, and then what's happening in the housing market, right? You have the silver tsunami coming. Okay, what does that mean? Well, all these baby boomers, people born between 1946 and 1964, all right, this 12 million baby boomers traveling through time. It's actually more than that. It's a bunch of them traveling through time, right? And um, they're either making markets or breaking markets. Okay, I was just talking to somebody today, about this, right? And they're heavy with the construction side of the world, right? And I was talking to somebody that was, concerned because they were in the condo conversions. They were converting apartments to condos, and nobody was buying the condos. Another guy, same meeting. It was the Houston Builders and Investors Group. Was, you know him and his partners bought a hotel during 9/11, or during the COVID lockdown, and they ended up filing bankruptcy on business bankruptcy on the project, right? And I'm like, man, both of those, the guy converting condos, making it a senior assisted living facility, and doing the same thing with the hotel, they would have never had any vacancies, right? They would have people lining up, all right, to get in, and then those payments are going to be like clockwork, regular, all right. On a, it would, so that's something that the industry, a lot of people still would, aren't grasping. Um, Ryan Lipsey, I'll send him this video. Um, I had gone to lunch, saw a realtor and his wife meeting with their client, this older gentleman, and he was deaf, so I could hear the whole conversation. All right, and his wife had passed, his kids are grown, and he didn't want to maintain that house anymore. He wanted somebody to take care of him. All right, and then um, I went to this. I thought it was a community fair. I'm thinking I'm going to see families with kids, right? That's my market. 25 to 45, married, got kids, own a house with a mortgage, or a small business owner. And it was a senior assisted living facility for dementia and Alzheimer's patients. And it was a bunch of women. It was all hospice nurses and in-home care providers, right? And I learned a little bit more about hospice than I thought I knew. I mean, I had to deal with hospice when my wife passed away, but only not even 18 hours, and she was gone, right? But my stepdad right now, he got diagnosed with cancer. He's got issues. He's blind in one eye. He's got equilibrium problems, right? And he got diagnosed. He's like 88 years old, and he called him in. They're taking care of him, right? And and there's no time anytime soon, that he's going to be kicking over. But he's got somebody there, and taking care of him, and checking on him, and making sure he's comfortable, and you know paying attention to him. All right, and so way more. If I'd have known what I know, if I'd known then what I know now, I could have been busy working, and somebody else would have been taking her to her appointments and taking care of the shopping and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but I didn't know that then, right? But those industries are going to be booming, right? There's going to be a lot of opportunity with those type of businesses. Okay, the got somebody at church. They repair fitness equipment or install fitness equipment, right? And their business is transitioning from going to the 24-hour fitness or Bally's or whatever, to setting people up with their own home gyms, right? They don't want to go they don't want to go out of their house, right? So there's just a different change. There's a book called 3 Feet from Gold, and it's about a guy um, that said he was going to start, you know, mining for gold, right, in Alaska or somewhere, and he hits a vein, buys all this equipment, right, finances it against the future gain of, you know, and after 3 feet, there's no more gold. He keeps digging and digging, and nothing, nothing, nothing. He's running out of money, and somebody who owns a salvage yard um, bought all his equipment, and this guy had been researching on gold mining, talked to somebody who was a geologist, and they said that probably the vein had turned, or that maybe there was a fault and it moved. It says go 3 feet left to right and start digging. Sure enough, bam, he hits that vein. All right. Now the first guy ended up making his million in the insurance business, right? But the that was a great story to talk about when I was um, recruiting people into the industry. But he be the point is, there's people like hit the wall, hit the wall, hit the wall, hit the wall, right? They're learning all these skills. They're they're hardworking. They're persistent, okay, but they're just not getting it right. But then they take a step to the left or the right, and bam, they walk through the door. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with these fluctuations in the market. Somebody who's behind, they're they're in their late 30s to late 40s, right? And they realize they're behind. Okay, they can catch up. Now, this is what's really interesting. I've been comparing you know the index universal life with a 0% floor, and most of the time they had a cap between 8 and 12 for years. Okay, one company did away with the cap after year 5. And I'm like, what does that do? Because what was happening, I'm like, compared to the S&P with no protection, no guarantees, just the straight up S&P 500, a index universal life with a 0% floor and a 12% cap just was performed a little bit less than the straight up S&P, right? But when you take the cap off, oh wow. Okay, now that index universal life does better than the S&P. Now between 2008 and up until probably 2020, even after that, 2023, the advisors who have their proprietary software, they're used to time in the market, right? They have they're you give them your money, they have your money in the market when it's up and out when it's going down. They're missing it. There was they went, but then now they started getting it. Now the advisors are doing better now. Okay, um, so they may be doing better than a index universal life with a 0 floor and no cap. Okay, but you're I've heard it said in real estate, um, that a lot of times it's like trying to catch a falling knife or trying to time the market for locking in your loan rate. We used to say it's like trying to catch a falling knife, right? And you got to be there in front of your computer when the market's down to to lock it, and then making sure your client's good to go for that, whatever, right? But so it takes that aspect out of it, right? So you have a peace of mind when everybody I know that's in has the guaranteed annuities, the fixed index annuities, or the variable or the index universal life. When the market's down, they're not worried. Their money's not going anywhere. Okay, but there's aspects of whether it's in real estate or whether it's in the market that this volatility is good for you. Okay, you can make up for lost time without having to take undue risk. Okay, and that's a big problem, and people that think that realize when people start realizing they're behind, that's what happens. They start taking undue risk. They start getting into real speculative stuff because they're trying to catch up. All right, been there, done that. No, and the same thing with businesses, right? They're they'll they'll change over to something that's just a fad, and now they got a whole bunch of inventory, and they're not making they're not it's not selling. right? Because everybody's got it, right? Everybody's selling it, or they're selling it online. Oh, that's another thing, right? Brick and mortar is going to be scarce, right? Because you know, unless it's just let's just say a um, impulse buy, you know, or your groceries, and you could even get your groceries online, right now, right? So you're not, you know, you can make your grocery list and then get it out to DoorDash and get your groceries, and you didn't fall for the impulse buying. The guy that's buying your list for the groceries, the cost of having them do that could be absorbed by what you would have been paying on an impulse buy, whatever, candy bars, sodas, whatever, right? Oh, my ex-wife, her love language was gifts. She got more excited giving you a present for your birthday or Christmas than you did getting it. And she was highly susceptible to that impulse buying. She'd see something, oh, they'll be so excited about that, and she'd buy it, right? And it was out of the budget. Okay. And there's people that are like that, right? They so that's why you gotta, and they don't like to be restricted. They don't like to have a budget. They don't want to operate within a budget. Okay. That ooh, it's like punishment to them, right? Because they want to have that flexibility to make that just discretional purchases, right? Anyway, well, golly, there was one guy. I'm gonna talk about him before I end this podcast. Robert Campbell. So I was in the mortgage business. I had gone to construction lending, and that crashed. And then I get there doing commercial lending, and that was feast or famine. And I used to go to events and meet people that had, that were real estate investors. And the San Diego Creative Investors Association, they used to meet at the Scottish Rite Center there in Mission Valley. So it'd be a nice big meeting room. And they had a speaker. His name was Robert Campbell. And he wrote the book, Time in the Real Estate Market. I'm like, oh, this would be a great seminar. Oh my God. This was June of 2006. This guy, and he didn't know how to use PowerPoint. He had an overhead projector with transparencies explaining what was going on in the real estate market. This is 2 years before the crash. Okay. It was amazing, right? And he talked about how everybody, how Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers were going to go under, how all these real estate agents, they were their own market. They were buying, up real estate, as an investment, and they were creating their own bubble, and how it originally started after September 11th, when everything was down. Bond markets were down, bonds and stocks, everything was down, right? And the only thing that was getting any kind of return was mortgage-backed securities. And so all of these corporate investors and foreign investors, like the Saudis and the Chinese, they went to Fannie and Freddie and said, "Hey, we want to buy up all your assets." And like, well, we don't have enough product for you. So they will make more product, and that's when they started coming out with the option arms, the pick a pay loans, right? The no income, no asset verification loans. I mean, they just opened it up, right? And that is what caused the bubble in the real estate market. And even when it crashed, what happened is banks were becoming property managers, right? They didn't want to flood the market, right? Because it's all supply and demand, right? And the property values would go down, and more people would walk away, and it would have just been, so they held on to them, artificially propping up the real estate market for a long time. 2020, um, there was this the repo market crashed. Okay, what's that? What is that, right? Well, it wasn't repossessed cars, right? I thought it was. So this is the repurchase operations with banks. So bigger banks like Chase and Barclays and you know um, the who's a big one in London in England. Um, the They would buy treasuries from the smaller banks. These were loans, and most of these loans were on used cars, right? And because of the push for the electric automobiles and China, no, not buying any more internal combustion engine automobiles from the United States, they thought people were going to do like they did with their real estate, park their cars along the side of the road and walk away. You put the keys above the dashboard and walk away like they did their houses in 2008. And so they were not buying these treasuries from the smaller banks, right? And so the Fed jumped in and bought them, and it did it for a while. Okay. And you didn't hear anything about it. Nothing like in 2008, where it was the numbers were pretty much the same as it was in 2008, but it wasn't an election year, right? All right. And um these so the there's this volatility happen all the time. Okay. And you want to, if you buy low and sell high, you are golden. Okay. But most people don't bother getting into whatever it is, real estate or crypto or whatever it is, until it's already booming. It's already taken off. Okay. And so looking, you know, the opportunities, for example, of the silver tsunami. All right. Everybody's known this was coming for a bit. The people that started early anticipated that they're already benefiting from that. Okay. Whatever else you can think of that's going to be affected by this anomaly, all right, it's probably going to do good for the next 20 years. All right. All right. So this is what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about how to time the market. I'm not talking about, um, what to do if it crashes. I'm not talking about, you know, the how it's going to affect, negatively affect your life. I'm talking about how if you set things up strategically, you can benefit from it. Okay. And you can get caught up. You can make up for lost time. All right. So, and I got people way smarter than me helping me. All right. So if you come to me, we're going to talk to them. All right. And they're going to help us. All right. Well, have a great weekend.